Good evening, everybody. Welcome in to Live and Learn. Hope you're doing well on Monday, January the 20th. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Happy Inauguration Day, if you're happy. Well, even if you're not happy, it's happening regardless. So I guess you can kind of take it. But happy Martin Luther King Day. A good holiday in the United States. A good day to remember. And we have so much to talk about. We just got a bunch of snow here in New Brunswick, and I'm thrilled. So thrilled about that. More snow. But I guess it is winter. But we had some awesome football this weekend. If the wild card weekend was a bit of a letdown, which it was, but also my thought on that is it's football. All these people complaining. Get ready for February when you have to try to, oh, we got the four nations and it's going to be so great. It's going to be so competitive. Is it? Haven't seen a game yet. Might not be. Have to hype that up and NBA All-Star games and no hockey. And I'm looking forward to that so much, like a hole in the head. I'm looking forward to that. So bad football, good. I don't care. I just want football, period. It's the best product around. But we had some awesome games. We're going to break them down today in just a little bit. But before we get to the games, the results, where we go from here in championship weekend, we'll have two games on Sunday, 4 o'clock kick, Commies and the Eagles, an all NFC East matchup. 7:30, the Buffalo Bills heading at Kansas City to play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Two very fun games, two interesting ones for sure. Before we get to that, I'm talking mostly football later in the show. So let's quickly off the top. I think Connor McDavid is going to get suspended. If you missed it, Saturday night, the Oilers were playing the Canucks. Fun game. Bouncing, watching that, watching some football, watching some tennis, watching UFC 311. That was a whole lot of fun. Awesome card at the Intuit Dome, which is beautiful, by the way. The Clippers have themselves a beautiful stadium. I think it's the best stadium. Non-football, it's the best stadium, bar none. In the NBA, in the NHL, I don't care. It's dumps on all of them. It's a beautiful spot there in Inglewood, but if you missed it, Oilers were down 3-0 to the Canucks. Canucks nearly traded JT Miller back to New York. Trade fell through. He played that night, had 2 points, and now it looks like he might be around for a while. But in that game, Oilers scored 2 goals, both by Leon Draisaitl. They're trying to tie the game late. And Connor Garland, former Moncton Wildcat, takes McDavid to the ground. It's not really letting him get up, tying him up. And McDavid gets up, finally gets to his feet, and he takes his two-hand cross-check Garland in the back of the neck. Was it dirty? Yes. He was assessed a match penalty. But I've seen this pointed out, and I watch a lot of Oilers games because to me, they're one of the best watches, if not the best watch in the NHL because they have the two best players in the world. So if you're going to say, if you're going to stay up for a game late night and you're not a freak like me where you want to watch, doesn't matter, it could be Vegas, Seattle, and you'll watch 3 periods of it. The Oilers are the team out west that you're going to pick. And this happens to McDavid a lot. It's something that I think he deals with. People might view him as a soft player. Garland is an irritant. Garland gets in people's grills. He's a dirty player himself, one might argue. And he got McDavid to react. So, couple things here. If I was the league, would I suspend Connor McDavid? I would not. Because I think he's defending himself in this way. He reacts. He shows some emotion, which is good. I liked it personally. Could he have injured Connor Garland? Yes. He will be suspended because this is very similar to what Austin Matthews did to Rasmus Dahlin of the Buffalo Sabres last year, where Dahlin had been cross-checking Matthews through some hits that game, and then Matthews takes his stick and cross-checks Dahlin in the head. So it's a similar play. They're both superstar players. And if Matthews got suspended, McDavid will get suspended too. I wouldn't have suspended either player, but I digress. I like this for McDavid because he showed that you can't fuck with him all the time. I think he was sick of players trying to do this. In the old days, you're grabbing a superstar player, somebody would grab you, and it would be the end of it. Ty Domi, Bob Probert, Rob Ray, it didn't matter. Connor Garland would be dealt with. That's not the game anymore. And McDavid dealt with it himself. He's never been suspended. So if you're looking, Austin Matthews last year, if I look at his suspension, 2 games for cross-checking Rasmus Dahlin. I think Connor McDavid will get 2 games because it's exactly the same play. Exactly. I don't think it's as aggressive, but it's exactly the same, give him the same punishment. Those 2 games, the Oilers play the Capitals tomorrow night, tough game. Capitals are red hot. And then they play Thursday against the Canucks, which would be a rematch. So if you look at it this way, McDavid's not in the game. There can be no McDavid-Garland aftermath. That point's put to bed. This game maybe doesn't have as many fireworks, which as a viewer. But as a league, clearly violence is not something that they really care for much anymore. It's not part of the zeitgeist, if you will. And that's kind of put to bed. So if you missed it, you can go watch the video. I liked it. McDavid showed some emotion. He showed some personality. He was pissed off, and he did something about it. Will that get him suspended? Yes. Will the team be happy about that, playing 2 good teams when he's not there? No, they won't be happy. But quite frankly, if I am him, I don't care. Because it's setting a point for the rest of the year, for games to come, for the playoffs down the road. Can the Oilers beat the Capitals without Connor McDavid? Yeah. Yes, they can. They are on a hell of a run the last number of games. They're playing the best hockey of their season over the last month and a half. Yes, they lost on Saturday. It's 1 loss. They had a horrible first period, and the Canucks were able to hold on to get the victory. Upsets happen. Calgary beat Winnipeg. Winnipeg's been the belle of the ball all year. So this happens. But that was an entertaining game. Thursday, we might still get something in that game. These 2 teams that played in the playoffs last year that clearly don't like one another. And again, it's January. Teams are approaching 50 games. You're seeing players that are pissed off. Matt Rempe and Arbor Xhekaj have a great fight last night at Centre Bell, which was awesome. 2 heavyweights just going at it. So you're seeing some guys pissed. You're seeing people that don't love each other, that don't have warm feelings. But Connor McDavid, they lost the game. Losing that one game, not a big deal. Oilers will be fine. Oilers, today I saw TSN's power rankings are the number one team in the NHL in the TSN power rankings. They're close. They're close. They're playing really well. And they'll need some additions, but they'll make some additions. But they're a good team. They made the Stanley Cup final last year. They could get back again. No problem. No problem. Not an easy road, but they could get there. Toronto Maple Leafs had a big comeback over the weekend, down 3-0, just like the Oilers, to the Montreal Canadiens on the road at Centre Bell. And they rattle off 7 unanswered goals. The Habs have been on a run. They bounced back, beat the Rangers last night to get 2 points on a Patrick Laine OT winner. But that was old school Leafs. The last 2 games have been old school Leafs. Their win against New Jersey, they weren't structured. They didn't play with structure. Saturday night was a shinny game that they won because they had more skill. They had a better goalie. And their players made plays. And that can happen. Not every game is going to be wrapped up in a bow. Now, you know this about me. There's media people that love the Maple Leafs. And they'll give a take because they're a fan, and I don't necessarily think they believe it. But they'll give the take, and I'm happy for them that they can give that take. People love them for it, and they move on. Here's my take. I don't think Saturday night was some pivotal turning point in the Maple Leafs season. I don't think it was a statement by any means. And that's not a shot at Toronto. If you've listened to me regularly, you know I think they're one of the best teams in the league. They should win the Atlantic Division quite handily. And they absolutely could represent the East in the Stanley Cup final. I've been very clear about that all year long. Talent to do it, the team to do it. But I don't believe a Saturday night, just because it's against Montreal, is a statement game when you beat a team that up till a month ago, everybody thought sucked, including every Toronto Maple Leaf fan, didn't think Montreal was any good. So beating a team that's not any good on a Saturday night is a statement turning point of a season. Doesn't add up to me. Stupid logic. To me, it's a win. Okay? I'm impressed with the win. Matthews can score a goal. Wow. Nylander scored a beautiful goal. I already knew this. I knew this about them. Here's my bigger question. They didn't play with any structure. I don't think those players like to play in structure. However, Craig Berube loves structure, and it's the way he wants to play. And it's the way that he believes the team will have its ultimate success. How much longer is this going to work? How much longer can the team do that? Can they do that for 4 rounds? Can they do that for another 30 games? Is there a middle ground that this team can come to? Because what I think more, if you're actually looking at it and you're thinking intelligently, Saturday night was not a turning point. It wasn't a statement game. It was Maple Leafs media and fans, which I don't know why I put a clarification. They're similar, the same. It was a game that was actually entertaining. It was a game that had moments, a game that had back and forth, a game that was free-flowing. The Maple Leafs have been winning this year, but it had been like watching paint dry. They're boring. And finally, you saw goals and you saw plays, and it was so phenomenal. And we scored 7 unanswered against Montreal, a team we don't think will be a playoff team and we think sucks. But yes, we beat them. Thank God for that. No, it was just an entertaining game. And they've been few and far between. New Jersey, more of an entertaining game. For the Maple Leafs, finding that blend of entertaining and also the creativity, the unique plays, the offense, that's what this team has to do. Can they? Who the hell knows? Because when they play in structure the entire night, they can win. But I don't know if they can win 4 rounds doing it just the boring, systematic way. I truly don't, because I think these players are going to rebel. William Nylander has rebel written on the front of the crest. He doesn't like this boring ass style. He doesn't want to eat bean curd. He'd rather have a fucking T-bone steak. But Craig Berube wants to eat bean curd and wants to be boring, so they clash. And he's a selfish player, and they clash about that because he wants to get his numbers, get his cookies. Of course, it's not going to work all the time. They're a really good team. They remain one of the best teams in the league, no doubt about it. And I'm not a Leaf hater for having this opinion. Saturday night was not a statement. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't an inauguration. It was nothing. It was an entertaining game that the Leafs won. And those have been few and far between this year. Point and the period. Speaking of Toronto, the Blue Jays made a move today after weeks of tense negotiations. The Blue Jays signed right fielder Anthony Santander to a 5-year, $90 million contract. Santander batted .235 last season with 44 home runs. Over the last 2 seasons, he has the 4th most home runs in all of baseball. Has been a key part of the Orioles' success in their back-to-back playoff appearances. I don't think there's a negative to this signing for the Blue Jays. They add a good player to their roster. He's 30 years old. They didn't overpay him, in my mind. They now have Guerrero, Bichette, Santander, who all can hit for power, who all are, and Springer for that matter, who are home run hitters. Gives them flexibility in the outfield. I think we'll see Springer play some DH this year. I think you're going to see Santander play a lot of DH. But you can rotate guys in. They signed Jeff Hoffman, the reliever. He failed a couple of physicals in Atlanta and in Baltimore. So that doesn't seem as awesome as a signing now. But baseball will be here quick. The Hall of Fame announcement is next week. I think it might be a week tonight. I think it's late. Let me find that. Hall of Fame. Comes up quick. It's always just a random day MLB announcement. Pardon me, it's tomorrow night, the Baseball Hall of Fame. Tuesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern on MLB Network. So our next podcast will discuss that. Ichiro Suzuki should go in. Unanimous. He might be the only one. Honestly. Baseball does this. There's years, there's one guy, there's years. But I think we'll see Ichiro for sure. That's the only lock for me tomorrow night. The only lock. There's steroid guys on there. A-Rod, Manny Ramirez. So you have Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, great pitcher for a long time. Andy Pettit, another steroid guy. Chase Utley. So Dustin Pedroia, great career. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but great career. CC Sabathia will go in. I think CC Sabathia with Ichiro, those two will be going in for sure. But interesting for sure. We'll talk about that on Thursday's podcast with the Baseball Hall of Fame and who ends up being inducted. But Santander to the Blue Jays. Like I said, good signing, good player, power bat, adds to their depth, gives them more options. I see Pete Alonso rumored to the Blue Jays. Blue Jays fans, I know you want this team to spend, and you want them to be competitive. I'm not spending bucks on the polar bear. I'm not. He's in his 30s. He's a declining first baseman. And he didn't have good stats last year in a contract year. Yeah, he hit a big home run in the playoffs that Scott Boras will bring up. But his season was pretty horrible. He's going to be a DH soon, if not right away, wherever he signs. He doesn't hit for average anymore. So I don't see it as an awesome fit. I really don't. You're going to have Vladdy and then Alonso. 2 first basemen and DH. Then you're going to have Santander, who I think will want to play some DH. And then I read something, well, Vladdy could play some third base. No way. Vladdy's not a third baseman. He was never a third baseman. He should never play third base at the major league level because he just can't do it. Not harsh, just the truth. But you're going to have guys you're going to have to pay. You're going to have a team full of old guys with Santander, Springer, Alonso, all on long-term deals. That team's not winning anything. With Santander added to the mix, I don't think the Blue Jays are winning anything. They're not better than the Yankees. They're not better than the Orioles. Hell, the Red Sox have been aggressive. The Red Sox have done more spending than the Blue Jays have. At this rate, the Blue Jays just want to finish outside of last place in the AL East. That would be a small victory. So I just don't think that's happening. Santander to Pete Alonso to the Blue Jays. I don't see it. Let some other team screw up and give Scott Boras what he wants. Because I think he screwed his client here. Alex Bregman. On the Blue Jays, I'd rather sign Bregman because they need a third baseman. Bregman would be the smart, not Alonso. No interest in him. None. I'm not doing it. Before we get to the NFL games, today it was reported that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, multiple seasons, have been up for jobs in years past, didn't end up taking them. It was announced that he is the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. They fired Matt Eberflus early in the season. Thomas Brown was in there on an interim basis. But Ben Johnson was one of the most coveted coaches on the market, probably the most coveted. And he ends up going to the division rival Chicago Bears. He will now be paired with 2024 number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams, which is interesting. I think the Bears made the best hire that they could. I believe Ben Johnson was the way to go when it comes to developing a quarterback. Mike Vrabel, when it comes to track record for New England, makes all the sense in the world building a culture. I don't know if Ben Johnson can build a culture, but I know he can coach the hell out of quarterbacks. Like he did Jared Goff, like he did Matthew Stafford. Creative plays, running an offense. He takes over a Bears team that has Caleb, that has Rome Odunze, that has Keenan Allen. They have so much talent if they can use it correctly. If they can find every piece and put it together, they have a hell of a puzzle. So the Bears are interviewing Mike McCarthy. They interviewed Aaron Glenn. They went around, talked to a bunch of different guys. I think they made the right choice because you need that quarterback to work. You put a lot of investment in him. And I think you can never guarantee that a quarterback's going to work out. But I think this gives them the best chance at success. I think it had to be an offensive-minded coach that has worked with talented players in the past, which he has. And he turned Jared Goff into a great quarterback. And you might go, well, Jared Goff's not as talented as Caleb, and I would agree. So now you get a better quarterback to work with to see what kind of offense you can build in Chicago. Not to mention, he's assembling, a star-studded cast according to Adam Schefter. He's hired former New Orleans Saints defensive coordinator Dennis Allen as his defensive coordinator. So Dennis Allen gets fired from New Orleans, now takes a DC job in Chicago. The Bears also are heavily pursuing former Saints interim head coach Darren Rizzi as their special teams coach per sources, which would make a lot of sense. Interesting, for sure. I approve of the Bears. So now Patriots are done. Bears are done. Jags, Raiders, Dallas, Jets, all still kind of lurking. News today, Jacksonville's head coach search. Jaguars are bringing in former Raiders DC Patrick Graham, former Jets head coach Robert Saleh, and Buccaneers OC Liam Cohen this week for in-person second interviews. So it sounds like those three are finalists for the Jags job. And I do think the Jags wanted Ben Johnson. I think the Raiders wanted Ben Johnson, quite frankly. You also have the Saints. Forgot about them, looking for a new head coach in the job that I don't think anybody wants. But lots happening. So 5 more openings to find head coaches. I think we'll get more and more announcements this week. I think the Jets are going to hire Aaron Glenn. They're going to go. I think the Lions are going to lose both of their coordinators. Obviously, they just lost Ben Johnson. I think Aaron Glenn's going to get a head coaching job as well, likely with the Jets. I think Liam Cohen, I think he's got to get it. He's an offensive mind, young guy. He's probably going to get a job. Robert Saleh, I don't know. He wasn't that great of a head coach with the Jets, but that doesn't mean other teams don't think he can't coach, and doesn't mean that he. I always thought he'd be a defensive coordinator back in San Francisco, but maybe not. But we'll see. We'll cover that this week, and we'll talk about them as the head coaching candidate news develops. Okay. Let's get to the games this weekend. So, the biggest surprise to me, and it's a stunner, honestly, because I didn't see it coming whatsoever. To me, all year, the best team in the NFL was the Detroit Lions. And when they were healthy, they were even better. But they were rarely healthy. And it made life difficult on Detroit. Alex Anzalone, Aiden Hutchinson. But they overcame it. They scored a lot of points. They had a dynamic offense. They get a bye week, getting healthy. You get Washington at home. Washington won on a last-second field goal against Tampa. Washington with a rookie quarterback, first-year head coach, just happy to be there. Well, on Saturday night, Washington went into Detroit and not just beat them. They kicked their ass. They made every big play that they wanted to make with little to no opposition. Jaden Daniels had 9 incompletions. He didn't get sacked in the game. He ran the ball 16 times and threw for 300. He threw the ball down the field for big plays to De'Ami Brown, to Terry McLaurin. Like I said, he ran the football. Only 3 yards to carry, but he ran the football. They had a balanced attack. They ran the ball more than they threw the ball. The Washington defense that's had its problems this year. They didn't turn the ball over. They came up with 5 turnovers for the Lions. Jared Goff threw a brutal pick 6 that he was then likely concussed on that same play. Three different running backs scored a touchdown for Washington. They kicked the Lions' ass. You can look at it and say the Lions had more total yards. Didn't matter. Chunk yardage, couldn't score big plays. Jared Goff didn't have a good game. The team didn't have a good game. They got pressure on them. They rattled them early. And that team never flinched. That team was not just happy to be there. That team wasn't just, oh, let's just believe, hope for the best. They went in there and just said, we're taking this game. We're winning. We are beating the Detroit Lions in Detroit as a 9.5-point underdog. Outright win. Jaden Daniels. He's already one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and it's only his first year, and that's not hyperbole. You see the freak quarterbacks, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar. Jaden Daniels is in that mix because he can make plays with his legs. He can make plays with his arm. He's not stupid. He doesn't force just crap down the field. He's got 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers in 2 playoff games, completing 70% of his passes. And he's ran the ball 29 times in 2 playoff games, which is a lot. But he is a nightmare to defend on this team because you go, Brian Robinson Jr. ain't bad. And when you give him the football, he can make things happen. He ran for over 5 yards a carry on Saturday, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He can chew you up. But also in RPO, Jaden might keep it, and Jaden is scary with the ball in his hands. Not to mention you have scary Terry McLaurin, and De'Ami Brown stepped up, and Zach Ertz catches a touchdown every playoff game, it seems. The Commanders deserve a ton of credit. And the Commanders absolutely have a chance to beat the Eagles on Sunday. Absolutely have a chance, and they very well may, because we'll get to the Eagles and the injury to Jalen Hurts and how that's going to compromise him. But Jaden changed that team. I think Dan Quinn's a good coach. I think the Cowboys screwed it up. They could have kept him when they know that Mike McCarthy was going to be fired in a year anyway, and they really like Dan Quinn, and they let him leave. And yeah, he might have the backwards hat on, and he might seem more like a bro, and he's not an architect, he's not a CEO of a team, but it works. They respond to him. Cliff Kingsbury can coach the hell out of some offense. He said he's no rush to become a head coach again. Yeah, well, you're coaching Jaden Daniels. It's the thing about being an offensive coordinator. It's great, but if you go from Jaden Daniels to Sam Darnold, you're not so thrilled about your circumstance, about your situation. Jaden Daniels is going to win Rookie of the Year. He's probably going to finish top 5 in MVP as a rookie. And he's 2 games away from winning a Super Bowl in his rookie year, something that's never been done. Getting to a championship game as a rookie quarterback is a rare feat. And doing it as precise and as well as he's done it so far. I love Washington. I love the way they played. They have balance. They can attack you in a bunch of different ways. They compete their ass off. I'm gutted for Detroit. I'm gutted for Detroit because I think back to when I was a fan of teams, and I rooted for the Dolphins. And rooting for the Dolphins is a very lonely existence. You have your family, and they love the Dolphins, but you also know, like, it's just nothing good's going to happen. Thinking back to my childhood, I rooted for a Dolphins team with Jay Cutler. And I rooted for a Dolphins team with Ryan Tannehill and with just crap, Chad Pennington. You know it's not going anywhere. And I love Tony. I was going to say Tony Soprano. Dolphins coach, the late coach. I loved him. He was an offensive lineman, and he looked like a character from Sopranos. That's why I'm saying that. But this is bothering me that I can't remember his name. I was thinking Tony. Is it Tony Soprano? That might be it. I'm going to get it right because it bothers me, and I like to be correct. It was. Let's see. But you don't get positive. It's just all bleh, and you feel crap about it. Tony Soprano. Yes, I knew I was in there right. I was thinking, I corrected myself. Had the Sopranos on the mind. Great show. But you're rooting for him and Joe Philbin. It was just lonely. And the Dolphins had the longest drought in the NFL without a playoff win. It's at 22 years. I've been alive 26. I've seen the Dolphins win one playoff game in my life. Oy vey. So the Lions were worse than being a Dolphins fan. The Lions were so obscure. They were terrible. The Lions franchise had two of the best players in league history quit the league because they couldn't stand to be in Detroit anymore around that negativity and that losing. Barry Sanders and Megatron. And they had the best team in the league. They're better than Kansas City. They're better than Buffalo. I still believe that. But they self-destructed on Saturday. They were so uncharacteristic. This team had been through a lot, and Dan Campbell was openly sobbing at the dais about this loss, about what his players went through. They lost a nail-biter to San Francisco last year in the NFC Championship game. So close. And this year they have a better team, more experience, and they don't get as far. That is the fickle bitch that is pro sports. Nothing is guaranteed. Every year is different. David Montgomery came back. Aiden Hutchinson was trying to come back for the Super Bowl. I'm sure New Orleans had a bunch of tickets sold to Lions fans because they believed that they would have been in the Super Bowl. For good reason. But it's not meant to be. And it's, again, year to year. You go, Jared Goff will be back. Yes. Jahmyr Gibbs will be back. Yes. Jack Campbell. Jameson Williams. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Looks great on paper. But they're likely going to lose both of their coordinators. You might get to the Eagles. This happened to the Eagles when they got to the Super Bowl. They didn't win a playoff game the next year. It changes your team. Kansas City never lost Andy Reid. Kansas City never lost Spags. Matt Nagy's been with that team a long time. They keep their people. They don't get plucked away. So the Detroit Lions fans, I feel for you. It sucks. I thought you were winning the Super Bowl. Didn't think that your season would end on a loss to the Washington football team. But it does. You can do nothing but shake it off and hope for better. That's it. But to me, that was the biggest upset of the weekend because they had the best team. and they should have gotten to the Super Bowl, and they should have won it. I still wholeheartedly believe that. But it's not going to happen. Not this year, anyway. We're going to go AFC, because I got to talk about this Bills-Ravens game. We're 45 minutes into the show. I got to talk about this game. It was promoted, talked about. Is it going to live up to the hype? Ravens, Bills. Lamar, Josh Allen. The 2 MVPs. What's going to happen? Not only did the game live up to the hype, the game was awesome. It was a battle, freezing, in the snow, in Buffalo, and the Bills not only covered +1.5, home dog, but won the game outright to advance to another AFC Championship game where they will rematch Kansas City, a team they lost to in the 2023 AFC Championship game. So, where did this game go wrong? It's the easiest point to go is the Ravens turned the ball over 3 times. The Bills turned the ball over 0 times. And I think there is some truth to that. The Buffalo Bills played that game very calm. They played that game as if nothing was really on the line. They didn't force feed Josh Allen throws. He didn't throw for 200 yards. He didn't have to. I thought he played great. Other than that crazy game against Kansas City, where it was a shootout, that was the best game of his playoff career. And he didn't throw for 200. But he did so many things in that game that were smart. It wasn't about him. It was about the team. He ran the ball. You had James Cook. You had other players that made plays. And they won. He 16 for 22, $127, 10 carries for 20 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He was superb. Superb. They ran the ball 35 times. They had 3 rushing touchdowns. It was enough. They didn't turn the ball over. Keon Coleman had 1 catch. Dawson Knox didn't have any. Mac Hollins 1 catch. Shakir had 6 for 67. He was their big dude. He had some big catches in the game. But it was a snow game. Shitty conditions, freezing, and they ran the football. The Bills have morphed into a panic team, to a team that you need to have Josh throw the ball 50 times, to a team that goes, let's just find the best way to win this particular game and go ahead and do it. Which is exactly what they did. Intelligence. Finding a way. And I think it's an evolution in Josh. I think it's an evolution in the Buffalo Bills. Going from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady last year as offensive coordinator was a career-defining moment for Josh Allen and for the Bills franchise. It needed to happen. It was a must. But you look, Damar Hamlin comes up with a strip, a fumble. He makes a play. Terrell Bernard, a guy who was once an undrafted free agent, comes up with a fumble recovery, forces a fumble of Mark Andrews. This team is not uber talented. I think James Cook is an above average back, and I think he's really good, really talented. Josh is a fantastic quarterback, and other than Mahomes, he might be the best, but Lamar's great too. They don't have an elite receiver. Their offensive line, I think, is average. Their defense does not have an all-pro. It does not have an elite player on it. At any particular, I like Ed Oliver had a really good game yesterday, but he's not a guy you go, think of defensive players that you can have name value. Ed Oliver is not one of them. So they do it their way. Smart football, run the ball, make plays. And they didn't turn the ball over. It's such a key point. They didn't turn the ball over. They were smart with it. And they just made things happen organically. And that was really impressive to see from this group. To ball. First off, top to bottom, Baltimore is a better team than Buffalo. If you're just looking at talent, if you're doing a Madden roster and you're like, let me look at these rosters, which do you want to start a franchise? Who am I going with? You're going with Baltimore. And they didn't have Zay Flowers yesterday, who's great. And Rashad Bateman was banged up, but even still, they got Lamar, and you have Derrick Henry, who's the beast. And yet, Baltimore retools. Baltimore adds Derrick Henry, and you add better defensive players. And Roquan Smith had another All-Pro season. And Kyle Hamilton was awesome for them, moving up in the defense that changed their year. And yet, you still lose. You were worse than you were last year. Three turnovers, and Lamar had two of them. Lamar's great. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's not a great playoff quarterback. Lamar is definitely more of a Peyton Manning than a Tom Brady when it comes to showing up in the big moments. That fumble with the Damar Hamlin that was then picked up by Von Miller, brought back to the 25, that ended up in a touchdown, simply can't happen. It can't happen. Inexcusable play. A bad interception after an opening drive that led to a touchdown where they look phenomenal. Their defense gave up 27. That should be enough to win. Keeping the Bills' offense to 27 points. Keeping Josh Allen to 127 passing yards. Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews will take the brunt of this loss. Because Mark Andrews fumbled with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter after he made a catch and got greedy and tried to cut back. Bernard punched it out, Peanut Tillman style, and he recovered it. And then Baltimore gets the ball back after the Bills, on a decision I disagreed with, kick a field goal. Kick a field goal to go up 8 instead of going for a touchdown that would have sealed the game. Baltimore ends up scoring a touchdown on that drive. Beautiful play from Lamar, extending the play, finding a man in the end zone. 2-point conversion. Mark Andrews, wide open, has the ball, and he drops it. 2 disaster plays in the fourth quarter for Mark Andrews, one of the best Ravens of all time. He leads the franchise in career receiving touchdowns. He's a legend in Baltimore. You go through the whole game. Did they lose the game because of Mark Andrews? No. I think there's a difference. Did they lose because? No. Is it the reason that they ultimately didn't prolong the game? Yes. Because it's the whole game. It's their whole game plan that lost, not a singular moment. And I believe that wholeheartedly. The Ravens only giving Derrick Henry 16 carries. That's a losing decision. That's a stupid decision. 16 carries. Justice Hill ran 6 times for 50 yards. And yet they didn't run the ball 30 times in the game. In the snow. Derrick Henry ran the ball 5 times on a drive in the third quarter. 5 times. The rest of the game, he touched the ball 11 of them. 11. For the best back in football, not named Saquon Barkley, a human truck. Big truss, whoop, whoop. And you give him 11 touches other than one drive where he had five touches. And on that drive where he had 5 touches, you score a touchdown that he had? Todd Monken, what the fuck were you smoking? These people overthink it. Run the football. He's that good. Let the Bills' defense try to swallow him up. The conditions are terrible. The Eagles wouldn't do this. The Eagles didn't do this. I don't know for Baltimore. I really don't. It's much like Detroit. It's back to the drawing board. But again, Lamar had an MVP season. He's probably going to win another one. You had Derrick Henry, who made $10 million. You wasted one of the last great years of his prime. He could be great next year. Maybe he isn't. He's had a lot of damn carries. You don't know what's going to happen. Say Flowers will be back. I love him. Sure. Mark Andrews will be back. But again, they're a year older. It's different. John Harbaugh has been there a long time. It gets stale. Teams around them could get better. You could have injuries next year. You don't know. What I don't get with Baltimore, and it doesn't have to be Todd Monken. Could be Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator. Run the ball. You have a human truck. You have just a power back, and you don't give him the football. You don't give him the ball. Why is he on the team then? All those yards in the regular season, they go down the drain. Nick Sirianni is often much maligned in Philadelphia. People hate him. Nick Sirianni is in his second NFC Championship game in 3 years. In 3 years. You know what he did on Sunday afternoon that the Ravens didn't do? He gave his best player, his running back, the ball. A ton. And he said, you know what? Go win us the game. because the conditions are shit and we need you to run. And he did. Segue. Philadelphia Eagles edge the Los Angeles Rams 28-22. Had the cover. Rams plus 6.5. Gotta love the hook. Saquon Barkley ran 26 times for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 8 yards a carry if you're doing the math at home. Hurts ran the ball 7 times for 70 yards. That's 10 yards a carry. Kenneth Gainwell 1 for 10 yards. 28 carries to 20 passes. Good ratio. They should have ran the ball more because Jalen Hurts got sacked 7 times by that Rams defense, and also he injured his knee. So he really couldn't move all that much after the second quarter. I mean, it was crazy. Jake Elliott missed 2 extra points for the Eagles because he's just been a mess. But that right side of the offensive line, Saquon Barkley went there. The Rams never accounted for that play 3 different times in the game. They didn't account for it. On the Hurts touchdown run in the first quarter on that opening drive where he ran for 40 yards for a touchdown. The Saquon Barkley's first touchdown of the game, they went for 62 yards over the right side. They figured it out for a while, then 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Saquon Barkley broke off a 78-yard rushing touchdown that sealed the game. The Eagles have their flaws. Sirianni, sure, he does stuff that pisses people off, and you might go, he's not that good of a head coach. He knew where his bread was buttered, and he gave the ball to his best player, Saquon Barkley, period. Saquon Barkley is now 148 rushing yards away from breaking Terrell Davis's record for most rushing yards in the season, playoffs plus regular season combined, which I think he will do regardless if they get to the Super Bowl, because I think he'll get that many next week. If they're going to win, he'll have to. The Rams defense had their miscues. I mentioned that right side. They made mistakes. But they sacked Hurts 7 times. Jared Verse, the rookie from Florida State, was phenomenal. 4 tackles, 2 sacks. They had 7 sacks. This is a group: Neville Gallimore, McCullough, Fisk. They came to play. The Rams, in my mind, could have ran the ball more themselves. Where Stafford threw the ball 44 times. Kyren Williams only got the ball 19. He had over 100 yards in those 19 carries. Stafford got sacked 5 times by that Philly defense. If you look at a guy like Jalen Carter, was so good in this game, you could argue he really won them the game on that sack on 3rd down. The Eagles are an enigma. Because, again, you look up and go, Jalen Hurts threw for $128, sacked 7 times, hurt his knee. A.J. Brown had 2 catches for 14 yards. That's 3 catches and 2 playoff wins for A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith had 4 catches for 21 yards. Nothing. And yet, they've beaten the 2 teams put in front of them. They beat the Packers at home. They beat the Rams at home. And with the Lions losing, they now host the NFC Championship game. The NFC goes through Philadelphia. So no dome, no nothing. It's another game in the elements for Washington, who played in Tampa and then played in a dome in Detroit. So they haven't played in the elements in 3-4 weeks, which is an advantage for Philly to have that experience, because that was miserable too. NFC East, God, Jerry Jones got to be sitting there going, "Are you kidding me?" Philly and Washington are both in the NFC. One of them is going to the Super Bowl. Philly could potentially be in 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, and he hasn't been one since '95. Woof. But yeah, go interview Robert Saleh. See how that works out. If Philly is going to beat Washington, Saquon Barkley's going to have to be awesome again. Because Jalen Hurts really hurt. That knee injury was real. You saw the way he bent back. Was immobile for large parts of that game down the stretch, and his legs is a huge part of his game and the way he goes about his business. So that's just something to keep your eye on. But I do think that this team, they're the favorite. They're a 5.5-point favorite right now on FanDuel against Washington. I think you're going to see a lot of odds on the underdogs for this upcoming weekend. Both teams on the road to win. Buffalo being an underdog and Washington being an underdog, which is interesting. But Philly seems so disconnected, seems so far apart from a well-structured team, but they continue to win. They continue to find a way. This team could be broken up in the offseason. A.J. Brown could be traded. Decisions made. Doesn't matter. Go win 2 more games. You're a Super Bowl champion. Figure out your business after that if you don't want to play with Jalen Hurts. You don't have to play Detroit anymore. You've avoided that tough matchup. And Washington's no layover. At the beginning of the year, if you had told Philly you're going to be in the NFC Championship game and your opponent is Washington, you'd take it. Opposed to San Francisco, Detroit, I could name 3 to 4 teams that come to mind, you'd take Washington above them, above that matchup. But 5.5 with Jaden Daniels going to Philly. So in the season series, it is 1-1. Washington beat Philly earlier in the year. We'll see what they can do now. And finally, the Chiefs beat Houston on Saturday. To nobody's surprise, the Chiefs won. I mean, the Chiefs, that's all they do in the playoffs is win. Patrick Mahomes is now 19-3 in the playoffs throughout his career. Tied Joe Montana for the second most playoff wins in league history. He's only 29 years old. Now, Houston had more yards than Kansas City. Houston had more rushing yards, more total yards, and yet they lost. And the discussion is more about 2 plays. Pass interference that wasn't pass interference. And then another roughing the runner, you might add, where 2 Houston players ran into one another, not connecting with Patrick Mahomes when he was sliding, and they called that. D'Amico Ryans went to the media and said, yeah, we know going into this game, we're playing against everybody. First off, that quote is just such a loser's mentality. It's such a loser's mentality. Joe Flacco and the Baltimore Ravens could have had that opinion going up against Tom Brady, but they didn't. He beat them. Mark Sanchez could have had that opinion. Oh, wait, no, Mark Sanchez beat the Patriots. You can beat good teams. It's not illegal. It's not foreign. It's allowed. It's just, can you? Houston couldn't do it. Houston just didn't have enough. Period. It wasn't about the officials that won Kansas. Does Mahomes get calls? Sure. Just like Josh Allen, just like Tom Brady used to get every single call. He dived, he flopped, so I don't want to hear it about Mahomes. Kansas City is this lightning rod because you have Kelsey and Taylor Swift. I don't like that whole deal. Caitlin Clark in the box, like she gives a fuck about the Kansas City Chiefs. Give me a break. And they got to show her 100 times a game. I don't need that. I don't need that crap. But whatever. He wants to take Pfizer. I don't want to take Pfizer. He wants to do commercials for, liberals. Okay, good enough. Have fun. But Travis Kelce is also the best tight end of all time. Patrick Mahomes might go down as the best quarterback of all time. They just win. Houston is a loser's race team because they lost the game, and instead of saying, we didn't do this well, we shouldn't have turned the ball over, or we shouldn't have let C.J. Stroud get hit 14 times and sacked 7, oh no, the refs were against us, and that's why we lost. Yeah, okay. Here's the logic and where that ends. I can really make this simple for everybody here. Houston scored 14 points. So you're saying 2 calls would have taken away like how many points for Kansas City? They had 23, Houston 14. I don't know. I don't see how that lines up. Kansas City's offense wasn't good. Wasn't. Their defense was superb because it is. Chris Jones, Karlaftis, McDuffie, all those guys can play. They're all dogs. If Kansas City's going to beat Buffalo, that defense has got to be better. So that offense has got to be better. Mahomes got to connect on passes. Kelsey was the only one that played well. He had 7 catches for $117 on 8 targets. And he's just got to be more accurate, better. He took 3 sacks himself. So I think they know that. Buffalo beat Kansas City earlier in the year. Kansas City's only loss of the season is to the Buffalo Bills. This is the perfect story for Buffalo. If you're going to win, you have to beat the team that always seems to get in your way. Buffalo's beaten Kansas City 4 straight times in the regular season, but they've never beaten them in the playoffs. Lamar and Josh Allen are 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. This is the year to do it. This is the year to beat them. But Kansas City doesn't win because of officiating. It's a lazy argument. It's an incorrect argument. You want to tell me that there's too much coverage of them and of their boxes? I'm right there with you. Taylor Swift, go sing a song about, a boyfriend, or when you break up with Travis, go sing a song. I don't need to see her in the box. What's Caitlin Clark doing there? She played at Iowa. Her and Taylor Swift, that seemed like a genuine friendship. She seemed so weird being up there. Seemed uncomfortable being up there. And I have nothing against Caitlin Clark, great athlete. The most influential female athlete since, I don't know, a team sport athlete. Christine Sinclair. Sinclair did. I know she's Canadian, might sound a bit, but she did a lot. People cared. People liked soccer because of Christine Sinclair. Women's soccer in particular, it was huge. But she's very popular. And she's changed the sport, changed the WNBA, changed women's college hoops. made it better for women like Paige Beckers at UConn and Juju Watkins at USC, who are now big-time athletes making money in college to play basketball, which is great. But the Chiefs did win because of officiating. Did they get a couple wrong on Saturday? Yeah, they did. They called a pass interference on the Bills drive right before the end of the first half. That wasn't pass interference. Was that the fix is in? Oh, no, it isn't? No. Oh. It's interesting. Funny how that works. I'll tell you. Bills, Chiefs, if we go to our friends over at FanDuel. Let's see, FanDuel, what's going on over there for that game. I knew the line off the top of my head for Commanders, Eagles, but if you go, Kansas City's favored by 1.5 against the Bills at home. Yeah, I think it's going to be close to a pick'em before kickoff. I do think money is going to be coming in on Buffalo to win that game because I just think people think Kansas City's a wounded bird and this is the year to get them. It's interesting. It's not the worst weekend to have a two-legged underdog parlay, Washington, Buffalo. Not the worst thought in the world, all I'm saying. Before we get to tonight's action in the national championship game in Hotlanta between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Ohio State Buckeyes, Saturday night, UFC 311, Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. Couple things. The Lakers will always be better than the Clippers, but the Lakers do not have a better building than the Clippers. I love that Intuit Dome. What a fantastic location. The way they showed the fighters walking out, the boards they have, it's a palace. Makes Crypto.com look like Crypto.com. An old dump. I like it better if it was still Staples Center, but Crypto.com, enough with Crypto.com. But that Intuit Dome, UFC, if they go back to LA, screw Staples, screw Crypto, go back. The Intuit Dome's the place to be. It looked like the Sphere, but it was a regular stadium where the Clippers play. And the Clippers then beat the Lakers yesterday. So good weekend for the Clippers and the Intuit Dome. So what a night, UFC 311. Great night of fights. Some big fights, some big results. Couple of unbeaten guys in Rinya Nakamura, who's a minus 400. Peyton Talbot, who is a minus 1100. Both losing their zeros, their undefeateds. So huge results there. And those were just in the prelims. And both those guys were thoroughly outclassed. Peyton Talbot losing all 3 rounds to Raoni Barcelos, who was very game. In the main card, Renier de Ridder, former 2-division champion and 1 championship, submits Kevin Holland in the first round, now 2-0 in the UFC. Should now join the middleweight rankings. Good on him, defeating Gerald Meerschaert, submitting Gerald Meerschaert, now submitting Kevin Holland. Gelton Almeida, the talented Brazilian heavyweight, finishes Spivak in the first. Spivak had him down, had him a look at a submission, but reversals, hits him with a hard uppercut and finishes him with some ground and pound. He's got 2 straight finishes over Alexander Romanov and over Sergey Spivak. Gelton Almeida versus Cyril Gane, or Gelton Almeida versus Drago Volkov would both be fun fights for later in 2025. Yuri Prohaska, Jamal Hill What a fight, back and forth affair, a war. Both guys had moments where you thought they might finish it. Yuri, a dominant first round. Sweet Dreams comes out in the second round, making some big shots, doing better striking. But in the third round, Yuri, some nasty shots, hits him with a right that drops him. Hill gets back up trying to recover, but he presses him, knocks him down again. The ref is forced to stop the fight. Yuri shaved his head in support of a woman who just got diagnosed with cancer. She was at the event. She was at the press conference. He wants to fight Alex for a third time. It's not going to be next because they announced that Alex Pereira will be defending his light heavyweight title against Magomed Ankalaev on UFC 313 on March 8th. But I wouldn't hate it. The first two fights were awesome. Yuri Prohaska against Khalil Roundtree sometime later in 2025. I'd be all for that. Two guys that like to box, heavy punchers. That's a fan's delight. Adding that to a UFC International Fight Week card would be phenomenal. We'll see. Co-main event for the bantamweight title: Merab Dvalishvili fighting Umar Nurmagomedov. What a classic. What a fight. I think we'll see these two fight again. Maybe not next, but certainly down the line. Umar won the first two rounds. Better striking, attempting some takedowns, but to little success because you just see how good Merab is. But the third round started, and Umar looked spent. He looked tired. And Merab doesn't get tired. He's the machine. He kept going. He kept pressing. He landed takedowns. He attempted 30 takedowns in the fight. His boxing improved. The hands of Nurmagomedov started to drop, and Merab won the next 3 rounds. Retaining his bantamweight title, he now has wins over Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo, Sean O'Malley, Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar Nurmagomedov was previously undefeated. Beat Marlon Moraes. I mean, he's beaten legends of the game. Champions, great guys. Merab has beaten them. He's the best 135-pounder in the world. I don't see who will beat him. And I don't see an obvious rematch, or I don't see an obvious next fight for Merab. You could rebook Sean O'Malley, but in the back of my mind, I don't think Sean O'Malley, unless he knocks out Merab, is going to beat him because he can't keep up with that pace for 5 rounds. He needs to finish him, or it's not going to happen. He fought Petr Yan, another former champion that he's beat. You could rematch that, but again, that fight wasn't that close the first time around. Sandhagen doesn't deserve a title shot after a loss. Davison Figueiredo coming off a loss. Chito Vera, no. Cejudo's booked against Song Yadong, UFC Seattle, February 22nd. Rob Font's booked. There's no obvious answer. It almost says you kind of have to go with Sean O'Malley again. Petr Yan, I'd sign up for that. I think that's a fun fight. Because both those guys. But Merab's in an interesting position. I almost would love to see Pantoja move up from 125 to fight Merab for the 135-pound belt. That's a funner fight. Let's see how that goes. I think Merab would likely win, but again, that's more interesting. And in the main event, we talked about this Thursday, but on Friday, Arman Tsarukyan had to pull out of the fight because he hurt his back in weight cutting, couldn't cut the last bit of weight, couldn't walk. So he had to leave. He had to pull out. Renato Moicano took the fight. on a day's notice, but he was supposed to fight Beneil Dariush on the same card. So he steps in, lands one decent shot, but then Islam gets him to the ground. They scramble. Islam gets him in a Darce choke, which is his choke of preference, submits him in the first round. 15 straight wins for Islam. He finished Charles Oliveira. He finished Volkanovski. He finished Moicano here. Finished Dustin Poirier back in June. He's just a machine. You could argue he's already had a better MMA career than Khabib. He's that good. And now he waits. He's another guy that I think could look at it fighting at 170 pounds. But Bilal Muhammad's the champion. Bilal Muhammad is his friend, his training partner. They're both Muslims. I'm not sure they're going to fight, but Islam deserves a crack at being a two-division world champion. What a night. What a great card. Fantastic. Really entertaining. We then, on February 1st, you got an awesome event in Saudi. Nasser Imavov fights Israel Adesanya in the main event, 5 rounds. First time Adesanya's not fighting for a belt, not fighting on a pay-per-view in a very long time. And then you have Shara Magomedov fighting Michael Venom Page in the co-main event, which should also be a fun fight. But that's a stack card. So we'll get to that in a couple weeks. Tonight, a couple of things. Djokovic, Carlos Alcaraz, 5 a.m. tomorrow. Quarterfinals, down under. Great match. Great match. To see that in a quarterfinal of a major is crazy. I'll be waking up for that. I think Djokovic wins the match, by the way, if you were wondering. He's just better on hard court than Carlos is, in my humble opinion. And he's played really well throughout this tournament, being more consistent than Carlos. National championship tonight. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Ohio State's an 8.5-point favorite. Notre Dame's not as talented. Notre Dame needs to win the turnover battle. They need to run the football effectively. And they just need everything to go right for them. If that happens, they can win the game. Ohio State's got great receivers, good running backs. They got a loaded roster. I think Ohio State's going to win the game. Ohio State will be the national champions after tonight, but that doesn't mean the game can't be close. Notre Dame's got a solid defense. They're going to battle. I like Notre Dame plus 8.5 to remain in this game into the fourth quarter. Keep it close. Again, doesn't have to be a touchdown. Can be a little more than a touchdown. Ohio State wins the game because they're just overly more talented. Notre Dame keeps it close. Notre Dame plus 8.5. Ohio State ultimately wins the national championship. You can get Ohio State minus 400 on the money line right now. Don't bet that because you're not making any money. Okay, that's it for today. We had a lot this weekend. Thursday, I will be back. We will recap the national championship game. We will talk about the games coming up in the NFL this upcoming weekend. We also will chat about any head coaches that get hired. We'll look at NHL games from this week. Also, Connor McDavid just got suspended 3 games, not 2 as I predicted, which is funny, but he gets 3 games. And Tyler Myers also gets 3 games. So that means McDavid will be out for the remainder of this week. Won't be playing against Washington. Will not be playing against Vancouver. And will not play Saturday against Buffalo. So a couple days off for the legend, Connor McDavid. We'll be back later in the week. Like I said, Thursday night, this time, we'll be here live to break it all down. Until then, take care. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is the Live and Learn podcast.